All right,
Sorry.
this is Cesar slash Madshot. I've known Madshot for quite a long time. I typed him a little over a year ago. We initially typed him as an INTJ because it was just difficult to type him at first, and then after a follow up discussion, we determined that ENTJ was far more likely. Now, Madshot is interesting because he is not like your typical ENTJ, right?
Yeah, no, I'm definitely not. Definitely not. I'm a weirdo. Weirdo
And
NDJ.
when we first typed you, you thought maybe even ENTP for a while, right?
Yeah, pretty much because I just act crazy.
Right, the craziness factor. And like, what specifically, what characteristics about yourself do you think stood out that made you think you might be an EP as compared to an EJ?
You know what? Honestly, it's probably just like how perceivers are. It's just how perceivers are. Just they're considered like I don't know, lazy, or they're considered like they push everything to the end and stuff like that. And I was never really like a punctual individual. I was always like I would push things to the end, and that's not what I saw. And especially the ENTJ is not known as just like somewhat lazy. Like the INTJ, or at least how it's perceived. The INTJs can be lazy and stuff like that, but the ENTJ was always at one time like, nah, if you're lazy,
Yeah,
you're not an ENTJ, and
right.
that's what was like installed in me, I guess, to believe. So that's why I never saw myself being an ENTJ. But then there's also other situations where I would be extremely productive, and it just really depend on a lot of different variables. So that's why it also opened me to the mind of me being an NTJ.
Okay.
So they're saying that I'm louder than
Yeah, I
you.
saw that. I turned it down 5 decibels. Does it sound any better, Umbral? Let me know if he's still too loud. I can turn it down even more. Just let me know. I started with 5 because I didn't want to just make him muted.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Uh,
do. Umbro asked if I know. I do know my enneagram. I'm an 8W7, and for
W.
socionics, yeah, 8W7. I don't say wing. It's just weird. It's 8W7.
W7.
So and my socionics is SLE. I'm an SLE in socionics.
Okay.
Yeah.
We had actually
Anything else I don't know.
we had actually considered ENTP with you for a long while because like it wasn't just like something that I threw out the window. It was like, well, maybe he isn't it, ENTP, but like as you've talked with like your friend Trim, the reason you and him conflict so much is the TETI, uh, just completely missing each other's marks there.
Yeah,
So
I do. We argue all the time, and I think it's because of that. And I try to make him understand my point of view, but he just like it goes right through him. It's like a ghost, like Casper, But then when he tries to explain his idea, it just makes no sense to me. And I just think that's maybe TETI like just clashing with each other.
right, I think that's something you're really gonna see with the with the ENTJ and the INTP because they're the two NTs who are rationals. So they're very decided on how they think about things, and then it just kind of conflicts with each other there. Now, for the most part, like for you, is it more like he's not like seeing a perspective when you have a conversation with him? Or is it like he's not able to present you with enough information? Or is there anything specifically that like stands out as frustrating or annoying?
You know what? It's actually mainly both, but it's mainly that he can't see my perspective because sometimes he does come at me with information, and sometimes eventually he does win the argument because it makes more sense than mine.
Mhm.
Uh, but I think that happens once we just completely get off or switch a topic, and and sometimes I can contradict myself too without me even realizing it. So,
Yeah,
but I'd say mainly it's just him not being able to see where I'm coming from.
and you and him can go at it for a while because I mean I've
Oh yeah,
seen you
we for hours. Yeah,
at
we've
literal
done it
hours.
before.
That's one of the things I see with TE and TI. Even like sometimes FI and FE too as well. Speaking of FI, what do you think your relationship with FI is? Like,
My relationship
as a
with FI.
repressed function, how do you feel like that comes out in your life?
I don't really know much about the meaning of FI, as in, it's like who if I know myself or anything. I find myself, one thing that I guess I struggle a lot with is that I often look towards other people to tell me who I am. Like I know who I am, but then I don't at the same time. Like I'd have to ask, like, am I this or am I too, I guess I could say like self-centered? Am I too like selfish? And I wouldn't be able to answer that myself accurately. I'd have to get someone else's feedback. And then from that, I would decide if I really am or not.
So it's almost like you're trying to get like the TE objective points, like the data.
Yeah,
Like give me the data of the kind of person that I am. Uh,
exactly. Yeah,
I
that I see you
remember there was
summed it up.
one specific discussion we had. You might hear some self references to Madshot and I talk to each other outside of the stream. One time we were playing with your friend Jen, and you remember he called you selfish, and you were like, "Give me an example of when I was selfish." Like you were like actively asking him for the examples in the situation. I think maybe that's
Yeah.
what you're referring to there.
Yeah, because I don't necessarily see myself as selfish. I consider myself pretty selfless actually. That's one of the things that I'm pretty like certain about that I'm not a selfish individual. The only thing I can see myself being selfish is food because I love food. But
I feel
anything
that on
else,
a spiritual level, man.
yeah, like anything else, I'm not really. I could really care less. Even money, and the ENTJs is supposed to be big on money, but I could really, I'd rather. I'm looking forward to the good time rather than the whole worried about spending money thing.
Right. And in terms of that, I think one of the issues we may want to talk about is you've thought about hedonism as like maybe a struggle that you've struggled with, like wanting
Yeah.
to indulge in things.
Yeah, way too much self-indulgence. It's like SC at the maximum. But and a lot of the times that I want to like, I guess I already live a hedonistic lifestyle. Say that properly. But many times that I try to like get out of it, it's just a part of me thinks that like that's who I am. So if I get out of it, then I'm losing a part of who I am, and I don't want to do that. But then I also think that that's just probably me making up an excuse for not quitting that lifestyle and finding a better one.
Right.
So, and I don't know which one's which.
I think that's something that the FI types are going to struggle with in general when it comes to like breaking habits and things of that nature. Because a lot of the times, if they've done this thing for long enough, it becomes part of their core identity. Like, oh, I am this kind of person, and if I stop doing these types of things, am I no longer the type of person that I like to be? Um, and then FI is like, I don't know about that. I
Yeah,
find that
that's what
the
I think.
the FE types are usually more willing to change, like if it'll have some sort of beneficial impacts on the people that are close to them, as opposed to the FI types where it's like I want to change because it'll have a positive impact on me or my identity or how I feel about this situation. But in
I
terms
guess,
of,
yeah.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, you go, you go. I was just
Oh,
agreeing.
I was just gonna say that in terms of like the hedonism, the indulgence, we typically associate this with INTJs, but I think it's really present in the ENTJ as well. And the ENTJ, it's almost like they're like excited to show it off a little bit more, if that makes sense. Like the ENTJ is often notorious for wanting the really nice car or the nice
Oh
like
yeah.
shirt or these sorts of things. And it's because they have the TE of like competency awareness. So it's like they're trying to self relate themselves in terms of how they compare to everyone else around them, in terms of like how well they're doing on an SE level. So like my SE is better than your SE is essentially what they're saying with that type of statement. Like, look at this nice thing that I'm wearing. Look at these nice things that I have. And in terms of competency, this makes me higher than you in competency.
Yeah, no, I definitely see the whole like I guess bragging aspect in me a lot. And the whole buying a really like nice car and really nice shirt and all that stuff. And I guess just for like the whole flashy bragging rights thing, I could definitely see myself being like that. I don't know what that is essentially. But I'd
Right.
say I'm like that, yeah.
I think that's typically just the TESE together. Because like if you look at ESFPs, they kind of have it as well, but for them it's more like they're showing off for themselves, and it's less like they're trying to like compare to others or like beat others, if that makes sense. It's like it's not a competition. Whereas with ENTJs, it's like it is a competition. I want to be better than everyone. I want to be the one
Yeah.
who's winning, quote unquote.
Yeah, it is a competition. I would never do something like that for myself. I just couldn't. Like especially when I go out, when I go out like anywhere, it could be anywhere like McDonald's or anything. I can't be dressed, but I guess you could say like I can't look bummy or I can't look like sad or depressed or anything. I have to be looking tip top shape, and that's basically just to compete with what other people have and to make sure that when someone does see me, it leaves a good impression. But I wouldn't be for myself. I want to do that for myself.
Right. I've rarely found NTJs who will leave the house in shambles. I talk about my old INTP friend occasionally who we go out to get lunch together, and I'd at least put on pants and a shirt, like a t-shirt, take a shower or something. He'd literally go in like dirty sweatpants, t-shirt with holes in it, and it's like, oh my goodness, I
Yeah, I
can't
can never do that.
I can't
I can never
imagine
do.
that TE. Even the FI is just like, oh no, have to maintain my self-image. Maybe it's the FI and the SE in some case, because I think the SFP NTJs are very self-image focused, if that makes sense.
I guess it could be. I mean, I remember seeing a YouTube video in regards to that, and I think it was your video, and about the whole perceived self-image, and it was that was making a lot of sense because what I guess that's what they do it's so that people because they want to be, or I guess NTJs they want to be seen as something else. So like I guess they dress according to how they want to be perceived as,
Right.
I guess.
Yeah.
So that's why you want to dress nice because they want to know you're a fancy, nice, individual that cares about themselves. But then if you dress bummy, people that normally dress bummy don't really care what other people think. That's why they dress bummy. Because if you cared about what other people think, you wouldn't really dress. You would dress to impress. If but then I mean sorry, the other way around. But then if you care what other people think, then you dress to impress because you want to impress those people because you care about what they think, and that's mainly where it comes from.
Right. And there's this really interesting contrast now that you bring that up between like NTJs and NTPs. Because a lot of the times you'll find that like NTPs will dress like they don't care what people think, and then they will care what people think. Whereas with NTJs, it's like they'll dress like they care what people think, and then they don't care what people think for the most part. Or like not to the point where it's gonna like hurt their feelings if somebody
Yeah,
says
yeah,
something.
no, I completely agree. I see, like it's like people might think that we care exactly about what they think, but it's not necessarily that. Because I really could care less about what they think, but I don't know. That's weird. I just do it though,
It's more like
and it
maintain self image, like how
image.
you want
Yeah,
to present yourself, the FI version of who you think you are.
yeah. It's like I don't care what they think. I know that I'm presented in a way that I like at least,
Okay.
and yeah, I guess so.
So let's switch gears just a little bit. Is there any characteristics or traits about yourself that you're not particularly proud of, or you think that like you're not too happy with?
See, I struggle really hard with I guess choosing a side between like being good or being bad. As in a sense, it's like, one moment I could be extremely like selfless and just really giving towards other people. And then one moment I could become like this really like I guess backstabbing individual. And it's happened before a lot in the past where like out of nowhere I could just change my personality or something. And where I could, if something bad happens, I can easily just completely backstab someone that I've already been friends with or known. And during the whole situation, I'm super chill and feel good about it. But then there's also really situations where I do really bad stuff to people, like really immoral stuff. And then there's situations where I do stuff that's extremely kind. And I never find myself leaning on one side. It's always just split down in the middle. Either I can be really nice or either I can be really mean.
All right.
And I was looking of ways to, sort of like diminishing like that negative side, but it's just really hard.
Okay. What that sounds like to me from a type perspective is FI isn't like at a point where it knows what it is yet, if that makes sense. Where it's like you have a deep down sense of like, I think I'm a relatively good person, but if something goes against the TE so much to the point where it's like TE feels like it's going to explode, it does explode. And maybe that's why you enter those states where you enter maybe a little bit of TENI manipulativeness. I think, the Machiavellianism, that type of thing is quite common with NTJs and stress states. And it's because that FI is just like, it's not valued as much as the TE. And if you're not bringing yourself to be consciously aware of the type of person that you want to be, then you're not going to then you're not going to live in accordance with that, if that makes sense. With
Yeah, no, I completely
ENTJs,
agree.
with ENTJ's FI has to be brought to conscious awareness, which means like if you're finding yourself in a state where you have to be, or you're struggling because you have to make some sort of moral decision, you have to stop and think to yourself, what is the type of person I want to be in this situation, as opposed to the result that I would get from this situation, because the
I wouldn't
result is the TE.
I wouldn't see myself. I don't think I would ever, actively see who would I want to be in that situation. It would mainly be like I guess the result. Like what do I want to come out of this? And if I'm ever bad or if I'm ever in a negative situation or in a negative state of mind or like if I'm ever being manipulative is to really show, it's to give consequence to whatever action happened before that. I'm not just going to be mean or bad without any reason. Maybe I
Okay.
was in the past, But there's has to be, it's mainly as a result of a consequence that happened.
So essentially, you're saying that when you enter these negative mind states, it's almost like you're giving people what they deserve, quote unquote. Like
I wouldn't say what they deserve. It's just I would say it's as in a way of underestimating me.
okay,
It's like maybe I guess I can start off really. I guess I understand now. I'm trying to make sure I'm trying to work my FI here. I guess I would say that I normally start off as kind, and sometimes I guess people can take advantage of that. They normally, I'm not myself taken advantage of, but they they overuse the kindness, I guess, and I'm being kind to them because I can be extremely mean. And then once they overuse that kindness, and I always let them know, but once they overuse it, then that's how I show them, what happens or how mean I can get. As in like you don't really know me. If you think I'm just kind, you don't really know me. And
right,
once I do that, that's kind of what comes out of it.
okay. So you have very clear boundaries, or at least if they're not clear to other people, they're clear to you. And then if people overstep them, you
Yeah,
enter
I try
into
to make it clear to other people. I always do.
okay,
But in a sense, it's like, I'll be really nice to you and stuff. But no matter who you are to me, I can always completely just go rampant if you ever overstep those boundaries, I guess.
okay. And do you ever find yourself feeling bad or like regretting the actions you take afterwards?
Sometimes.
Sometimes
Probably like, but when it comes to regret, it's probably like less than a day.
less than a
Maybe
day.
it's like an hour or a couple of hours, maybe an hour to three after the situation happens. But then after 3 hours, I completely lose all like attachment to what I had,
Okay.
and it's just like whatever. But like I guess those 3 hours, it's like those good feelings of me clinging on to or clinging, or like connecting to the situation. But then after 3 hours, it just like loses hope, and it's just a tarnished. And like I've lost many uh friendships, I guess, just because I wanted to. And it's not necessarily my fault. I'd say a lot of the times when I lose a friendship, it's not my fault. It's just they just can't handle, I guess, the blunt and serious aspect of my. Or even though I'm also funny, I can also be really serious and blunt, and they can't sort of handle that. And a lot of times, I could have easily brought back a relationship if I would have, just swallowed my pride.
Yeah.
But I can't do that, so I just let it go away.
I've seen you get into the FI bulldozer mental state, where like you have a conversation with someone, maybe you disagree with them, and it's just like te you run them over. You don't give them a chance to respond or even have their own opinion. And I think that maybe is one of the issues that is going to be hard for developing ENTJ, to be aware of. Like, hey, my TE it literally has the force to bulldoze almost anyone in conversation if I'm not careful. And what you said there means you already have a good recognition of this. Like you said the phrase, if I just swallowed my pride or let them talk or something, maybe I could have saved that friendship there. But then the FI is so far down in the function stack that it's like in the heat of the moment, that's a really hard thing to admit. Two
Yeah,
hours later, it's a different
so
thing.
hard. It is really, really hard to just swallow my pride. And very, very, very few times that I've done it, but it's extremely hard. Just swallow my ego and just and a lot of times I guess I do have some fault in it because if it wasn't because of my pride, the relationship or that friendship would still be back to where it was. But then again, it's just since the most negative aspect or the main fault lies on them, I'm not gonna take the step. And I'd rather them admit that they were wrong, and then after that, then say yeah, I'm not all good. I did some bad as well, but I'm not gonna be the first one to come out and say that.
Okay, so you're not going to be the first one to build the bridge. Essentially, like you'll accept a bridge if it's built to you, but
Yeah.
you're not going to
Now,
extend.
normally, I guess I build the bridge, and I guess the one that destroys it is mainly them by lighting up a little bit of fires, I guess, along the bridge. Doesn't destroy it completely, and then I'm just one that just realizes what they've done. And since that bridge is no longer perfect anymore, because it's not what I made. Because
Right.
like for example, I guess if I can connect that with something like, let's say I'm playing a game like Rust or a game like Minecraft. If I were to build something myself, there's a certain way that I want it. I guess there's a certain way that I want a relationship. And then let's say I make a building, when that building gets tarnished or gets moved around, or it's not like how I I wanted it to be, and other people move it, then it's just not what I want it to be, and then I just want to just destroy it because it's not what I want.
Right.
You know what I mean? So what I'd rather do is that situation. I guess whenever they make or whenever like they change stuff from what I build, I guess to have them put it back or make it to how it was, and if not, then I'm just gonna destroy the whole thing.
Right. So
So it's like
there,
I guess a black and white perspective.
right, which is common in the rational types, the thinking and feeling dominance.
I
So
guess that's another bad thing. Like
it
my black and white perspective, everything is black and white with me, honestly.
it could be a bad thing. So what you just said there was actually really interesting because there's something really important about the NJ types that's noted in the MBTI statistics manual. So specifically the INJs, so the introverted intuitive dominants, are notorious for having the least amount of satisfaction with like long-term like relationship commitments, for example. And I think you can see this bleed over into the ENJs as well. And you have to ask yourself, well, why is this? And it's because introverted intuition is really good at seeing the potential of how things could be. And when that potential isn't being met, or it's ruined in your case, like what you just explained, it's almost like the whole thing is just gone. It's just like, oh no, I don't want to deal with this anymore because it's not what it could be.
Yeah,
And oh, go ahead.
like it's not worth rebuilding, I guess, or maintaining.
Right. It's like, well, yeah, why spend all this energy maintaining this crumbling, burning bridge when I could just toss it out the window and go look at that nice one next door, you know? Or go,
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
right. And that's one of the issues that I think all the NJs face in particular, not just the ENTJ. But the thing that about the ENTJ compared to the INJs is the ENTJ is going to be so much quicker to discard that old bridge compared to the INJ. Where the INJ is going to be on the fence and they might even find themselves sticking with that bridge if it's not doing well for a while. The ENTJ is going to be like, well, it's a black and white thinking. You know, it's not worth my time. Why bother? Get rid of it. And that kind of goes back to the point that with the development and consciousness awareness of FI as the ENTJ matures, that's when they have to start realizing, is this specific bridge one that I want to maintain? And they have to, because you're not going to have them with everything. It's not going to be like, oh, I need to maintain all the bridges in my life and keep all my friendships. No, that's unrealistic. But for
Yeah.
an ENTJ, you have to recognize like, is this specific one that's really important to me, whether it's a relationship that you're in, family member, a friend, is this one that I would put in the effort to keep if something happened? And if so, let's say, something happens, what steps can I take to make sure that I don't just throw it out the window? Because that'll be the first instinct, right? Just get rid of it. Move on, make a new friend, that type of thing. And
That
instead
has
oh, go ahead.
that has happened in the past where there's always been, I can think of two relationships, I guess, where, I can't just throw the bridge that I try and rebuild, but it's mainly I tarnish, destroy it. But there's
Mhm.
always, there'll always come that one relationship where I just can't necessarily let go because I got too much from the relationship or
Right.
from the friendship, and it feels like a waste. And in those friendships, it's mainly because I can see that rebuilding the bridge is going to benefit me, even if I have to swallow my pride or stuff like that. It's at the end of the way, there's gonna be more reward than if I were to just swallow my pride and just throw it away.
Right. And that's it's is it generally a good feeling even when you do have to swallow your pride? Like it's gonna suck at first, right? Of course it is. But in the long run, do you find that to be kind of a rewarding thing? Like, oh, I'm glad I didn't make X mistake or do X thing.
Yeah, of course, of course. If it's rewarding, of course I'm gonna be glad that I did that. And
Okay.
there's also maybe some relationships that I would have been happy to still have, and I can always revisit because I'm not one to hold grudges. Like for example, I'll go ahead and destroy the bridge. I'm not gonna rebuild it, but they can.
Okay.
So if they just come and rebuild it again and they leave it how I normally had it after me destroying it, of course, then that's fine. Right ahead. We can start off zero. And
Okay.
that happens many times, but I myself, I'm not gonna like you already lost a chance. Basically. I normally start it off. I normally build the bridge, but once you do stuff with it and you try and destroy it, then I'm gonna destroy it and I'm never gonna build it again unless you make the effort to build it.
So
And
essentially
then
you're
if
leaving the door open for them.
Yeah, I always leave the door open. I don't think I've ever like just completely closed the door on anyone, no matter like how bad you do me, because it's like it's just I don't know, it's just me not caring, and it could actually it could just be me not investing enough emotions in a relationship to me care enough to leave the door closed. You know, because I guess like what you can see is like, you know, if you don't invest enough relationship or enough emotion into the relationship, then you can leave the door open because it was just like okay, you know, it wasn't something out of that world. And then if they like, you know, I've been done wrong before, just like I've done wrong people,
Mhm.
but I'm never gonna, you know, hold it against them because if they were to do me wrong again, I don't invest enough emotions to where it would affect me personally.
Okay.
So it's like, oh, they wronged me, like, okay, well, you know,
S-
another day.
So do you
So
almost feel like it's like a safety measure to not invest yourself too much in relationships?
um that's a good question. I don't know if I would consider it a safety measure. I would just say that's more of who I am.
Okay.
And
S-
but I wouldn't say necessarily for safety. I
All
don't
right.
know. That's one of those questions where I'd have to ask someone else because I don't even know myself.
But yeah, well, yeah, that's
So
kind of a big question. You know, that's like asking, do I not dedicate myself strongly to relationships because I don't want it to be something that I have to be attached to? You know, attachment is usually a big issue for the NTJs. Even for myself, attachment is something that doesn't come easy. It's because, you know, as an NITE or TENI, you see the long term implications of what it means to be attached to someone or something. And it's like, well, attachment in theory is also weakness in some sense, or it's vulnerability is a better way of saying it, not a weakness. Because if you allow yourself to be open with being attached to someone, well, then it's going to hurt if that
yeah,
attachment goes away.
I would consider it I wouldn't say necessarily say a weakness, more of a point of vulnerability. You
Right.
know, so
Okay.
where if it does go wrong, at the end you're gonna really be affected by it, and then it could essentially put me in a bad state of mind, and I don't want to do that. I'd rather just you know like I guess that's why I don't invest you know a lot of emotions into the relationship. I kind of just let it you know just drift.
Right.
So I'm not in that position where, oh my God, this I just lost this very valuable person to me. Let me go cry or something. Like, you know, one thing that happened the other day actually, I had my friend who's who's an INFP, right? She's I'm really close with her, but not close enough to the point where I you know, like if we're not friends anymore, like I'm gonna cry or anything. It's really of anything of the other world. Um and she came crying she literally came crying to me. Like I was playing a game and then she calls me. She's like, I need someone right now. And I was like, whoa, what do you mean you need someone right now? Like, what does that mean? And I just, and then she was like, well, and it's something because apparently like her friend like backstabbed her and she needed someone to talk to cry to and to come to me and cry. And in that whole situation, I'm just like, and then I'm like, I don't know if I don't know what I was feeling at the situation. I don't know if I was mad that she was coming to me. 'Cause I guess I was like, you know, happy that she can trust me, you know, to come with to me with that information. But I was getting kind of annoyed because I found it as a bad way to deal with the situation. And then essentially what I did, which is I always do in every situation, you know, one thing that I guess I'm bad at is comforting people. You know, when people, you know, they just comfort you like to just cry. I don't want to be there and you know and be that person for you to cry on. I want to be that person to help solve the situation because you're crying to me for an issue, you know. So don't come to me, you know, like you know, come to me for help, not for you to cry on. That's what I'm. So it's like I find it. I don't like when people come to me to cry. I like it when people come to me for advice or for help. So then
Right.
essentially, what I did is like I found a way to you know to tell her like stop crying and don't come to me crying without you know hurting her feeling because
Right. Right.
you know I'm good. I'm good in the sense to where I can.
You're
I guess
tactful
I'm
about it.
persuasive. Yeah, tactful. So I was tactful enough to where I tell her, you know, don't come crying to me. You look weird crying. Let's find the situation. Let's find the issue. And let's find a way to solve it. And then essentially, I found a way to solve it, and I always, you know, I fixed it. So.
Right. Well, yeah, and
But
that's
it's
just
just
you probably already know why that is, just because TE right off the bat is like, what's the effective solution here? You know, what can I
yeah,
fix
I
about this?
exactly. That's always what it is. And like I you know, she doesn't really know much about typing and stuff. So I really had to find a weird way to tell her that without just telling her, you know, I'm an ENTJ.
Yeah,
What do you want me to say? You know,
yeah, it's like
I had it had to be instead of, you know, I'm an ENTJ, like I'm not an asshole. You know, like come on, it's just like let me, you know, I'm not trying to be rude because I'm never trying to be rude to someone who's coming at me crying. I'm just trying to tell you, I'm not effective in that way. Let me show you how I can be effective and how I can help you.
Right. And
Yes.
that goes back to one of like the oldest questions that, they recommend you ask someone if they need if they're coming to you crying. It's like, hey, do you need
Yeah,
help or do you want someone to listen to you? Like,
exactly. And I want to ask them that, but that just go against me. So like that just goes against me. It's like you're practically when people tell me to ask that to someone, you practically tell me to not be me.
right,
So you just want me. So do you want me to be me, or do you want me to just change my personality completely? Because I can also do that. And I don't get me wrong, I can comfort someone, but it infuriates me.
right,
It just because I don't want to deal with people to where I have to ask that question. It's either you come to another friend if you need comforting, or you can either come to me and I'll always solve the problem. But it's just go to someone else if you need
right,
comforting, because I just find that as such a waste of time to just go to someone to cry. Maybe that's just maybe because I can't see their point of view, and I always try to see other people's perspectives. But I just can't see that perspective. I see it as such a flawed way of dealing with your problem.
right. And for anyone who's watching this and who kind of wants to maybe understand what that is like for the ENTJ and why they tend to struggle with it, imagine you're someone who owns a bicycle repair shop and someone comes in with a broken bicycle and they put it on the table and you go, I can fix this. And then they go, no, I just want to complain about my broken bike. Like,
Oh, it sounds like it's literally hell. It sounds like hell.
yeah. And it's just like, well, as the bicycle repairman, you're like listening to this person complain about their broken bike. And then it's like, no, they won't let me fix it. And it's my job and I'm good at fixing this. Why can't I fix it? Um,
Yeah, and I guess with them complaining, with them ranting, I guess they get it off of their chest, you know. But at the end of the day, they're always, they're gonna do with the whole crying and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, they're always, after they cry a good amount or after they get it out of their system, they're always gonna come to okay, so what advice can you give me?
right. So
And
that
I just
begs the
want to go straight
question.
to that.
Right. That begs the question, do you think that you, as a person, should at least try to meet somewhere in the middle in that regard?
You know what? I actually do. I do meet somewhere in the middle, and it's just it's not necessarily in the middle.
Yeah.
It's more of leading to the being to the getting straight to the point. But I always give them a little bit amount of time to to like that. But there's always there comes after I do that, it's like I'm running. It's like an introvert's battery. It's a thin battery, and you can use it up, sure, but it's gonna come to a point where I just can't keep it up any longer, and I have to go with the all right. So listen here. What are we gonna do about the situation? Because all this crying is just it's not gonna solve the issue. You've been crying for a good 5 minutes now. Now how are we gonna solve this so it doesn't happen again in the future?
Right.
And then yeah,
And
I
that
guess
could
that's
be
a
an
way of
issue
me meeting halfway.
because when specifically with like feeling dominant types, when they're in the state where they're feeling something strongly, it's like a storm almost. And it's like you're not going to get much done while they're in the mental state that is a storm. You have to wait for the storm to calm down and then you can provide a little bit of insight and help them with the situation. But if you try to rush into a tornado to fix the problem while the tornado's still going on, it's like, well, it's just going to toss you right back out and end up as a bigger tornado because it picked up some more stuff.
I've seen situations where that has backfired on me actually. I think I found a way to tactfully, I guess, wait for the storm to end. But there has been situations where when FI Dom just gets completely insulted by my bluntness as a TE Dom, and they just and it's just that's just me not being tactfully in the situation. But it's just why do I always have to be the one that's tactful, And it's just I guess that's just like what happens when you speak with an FI Dom as a TE Dom. You just have to be tactful about most things, I guess, because they'll just perceive it as the wrong way. That's what's
Right.
happened in the past, at least.
Yeah, it with both types, it feels like they're kind of just walking on eggshells a little bit. Like, oh,
Yeah,
like I don't want to step in the wrong area and say something that is going to upset them. Because deep down, the INFP probably doesn't want to like make you annoyed or make you upset, but they're also feeling these things very strongly. And what are they going to do about that? Yeah, they need to express that in some sense.
yeah. I
Um,
could never, see myself in that situation. I guess it's just finding a tactful way to know when you can, I guess, find the weak point in the tornado to where you can essentially just stop it. I guess.
right.
I guess that would be it.
You want to find the right time to calm it down, and then once it's calm, then you provide the advice or the solutions. 'Cause especially with INFPs who have the repressed extroverted thinking, they're usually really appreciative of extroverted thinking help once they're in the right mindset for it. Like if you can get them to the point where they're calm enough to, think logically about the situation they're in, they're going to be pretty happy to be like, oh, I didn't see that solution. It makes sense that you did because you're a TE Dom. I appreciate that. Just like how occasionally the FI Dom might be able to help you understand yourself better. That tends to be something that the INFPs and even the ISFPs are good at. It's like, oh, who am I? This sort of thing. And the IFP goes, oh, here's a good word to describe how you are, or here's the things that I think I've seen that describe who you are. Do you ever find that you have that kind of relationship with this person? Or maybe they have a good view of the type of person you are outside of, let's say, emotionally charged situations?
Well, actually, I'd say the INFPs are the ones that actually get to see the real me in a sense. It's just, so it's like, I remember, because this is like word for word. And I had this really close INFP friend who she let FI get the best of her, and we're not friends anymore. But that's another story. So basically, and everyone, so it was, this is like back in high school. Everyone always thought of me as like an asshole, with the whole like TE bluntness stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But since, she was only the one that really, I guess really let myself, I really let myself show to her, I guess, or to really anyone that's normally an FI Dom, because I like them. So, and then she gets weirded out when everybody's like, or Cesar and Madshot, this guy, he's such an asshole and stuff like that. And they find that weird because they don't see that in me at all. They see it as a possibility of me being asshole, but genuinely I'm not.
Right.
And then everybody gets, because I guess, they know me as like a mean guy, you know. But then they're the only ones that get to really know, I guess, a different side of me, like a good side of me. I guess it's like the whole, bad guy. I don't know, lost my train of thought. But
It's
yeah, they get to see a different side of me that I don't regularly show to other people.
I think
I
it's
guess.
because for them, they can see that FI essence very easily because they live their life through the lens of FI. And, as an ENTJ who throws TE, there's a reason that TE DOMs usually get on the nerves of people with high extroverted feeling. Oh, he's a jerk. Why is he a jerk? Because he's abrupting the FE with his TE. His cold hard facts, logic, whatever. Ben Shapiro, no. Is just going against the FE, like, oh, I wish everyone could kind of get along here. But the INFP comes along, and some of them, if you go against their FI, it's a whole different story. But some of the INFPs who are at least on that same wavelength as you are going to see that and go, oh, underneath the TE, I can very, very clearly see that FI authentic Cesar, Madshot, that's there. And that's what they appreciate. And that's why if you're blunt to the FI Dom, they go, okay, that's what he said, but I know deep down what he means is, what I'm seeing is, and I think that's why the INFPs tend to get along really well with the ENTJs. They always joke that that's one of like the golden pairs for the ENTJ.
Yeah, no, definitely. I guess I can see that. It makes sense. You always find a way to make sense of the whole typing stuff. And I can see that where they can, I guess, see the good aspect. Oh, why is my camera doing that? I guess they can see like the good aspect, I guess, a different way than other people don't normally see it. Other people just see jerk, but I guess maybe they look like for a deeper meaning or something.
Right. Well,
Which
they
is
see the you that's underneath what immediately shows. Because it's very easy to see the TE and go, okay, that guy's a jerk just because he said something very direct. And a lot of the times, ENTJs aren't trying to be jerk. It's not like they're like aiming with malintent. They're not trying to disrupt the social sphere. They're saying this thing is so clear and obvious to me that I'm going to state it in a clear and obvious manner because it surprises me that you all don't see it in a clear and obvious manner. And then to the FE types and some of the other types in general, that's just going to be disruptive. It's just going to be like, well, you don't got to be a jerk about it. But the FI Dom goes, okay, I see what he meant.
Yeah, a lot of the times I would say it's not that I want to be a jerk, but I can see, I realize that, oh my God, as soon as I say this, people are going to be mad. Like they're going to see me as an asshole, but I'm just going to say it regardless. Because anything else is just pure stupidity. So, it's like, you're going to come off as an asshole, but at least I do. I know I'm going to come off as an asshole, but it's not with ill intent. So that's why I say it.
Okay. So it's the price you're willing to pay for the T. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, that's literally it. Yeah.
And do you feel like as you've, grown, because right now you're someone asked your age in the comments. Are you comfortable sharing your age? That's up to
Oh
you.
yeah, I'm 19. Yeah, I'm
19,
19.
yeah. So you're kind of at that point now where there's probably a big difference between you now and you 4 years ago in terms of like
Oh,
TEFI.
huge. Oh my,
Yeah.
huge. Literally massive.
Do you feel like your
Some could say
FI
like
is more better maintained now than it was a few years ago? Or like you're more aware of how it influences your decisions?
it's really, really weird of you to say, because when I'd say when my FI was the biggest when I was like little, and then my FI, I would say maybe got either. So it's actually interesting. Either my FI got worse or my TE just got better than my FI, because my FI was really, really a lot stronger than my TE. I'd say back when I was little, maybe up to uh freshman year in high school. And I guess what that has to do is mainly with my mom and my grandma. I have a really, really healthy family in a sense. Is like my family, it's not, nobody's like apart. I don't have a bad relationship with anyone in my family. Everyone's close. I could go to my dad to talk whenever I want. I could go to my mom to talk whenever I want. But mainly, my dad being an TI dom, he's not the comforting type. He's mainly like the logic, like
Hmm.
just like me in a sense. But then my mom, she's a FE dom, and so is my grandma. And mainly, they're the ones that sort of like raised me in a sense of who they wanted me to be. So they're instilling a lot of these big FE points into you, and like they're instilling a lot of that. You have to be a really good person, you have to be kind to people, and you have to be all that stuff. And then that's, and I'm being raised as that to a point where, in fresh, and it goes to freshman year, I guess I sort of detach myself from that, and I'm like, oh my god, like I hate all that. Like why was I, that whole like being really kind person and being all that is just, it's kind of, it would sort of infuriate me to a point where I sort of detached myself from that, and I started to grow more as myself. And ever since sophomore year, like freshman year is when I had the idea, but ever since sophomore year is when I started to really detach from FI, I would say, and then just go really heavy on the TE, to a point where then my family sort of saw like a different side of me, I guess. I don't know. But
Maybe it's
that's why
kind of. Oh, good.
go ahead, sorry.
You're fine. You
Well,
finish.
that's why I maybe never saw myself as an ENTJ, because I was really just a really really kind individual, like extremely kind. There was no bluntness, assertiveness, or anything like that to me when I was young. It all came to me when I was like in uh like sophomore year and stuff like that. And I think that just and and I'm more comfortable with who I am like this than who I ever was before. I always dislike that, but I guess that's just what they were trying to make me be. They're trying to, think about it like an FE Dom with, teaching an ENTJ a literal FI inferior to just this, forget about all that and just be really kind to people and all that, and have all these emotions and stuff like that. And I started, I was big on that, but then it's kind of just like I started to really grow apart from it, and and it hasn't been the same.
It's like not only are they trying to impose feeling on you, but it's also extroverted feeling. And as an ENTJ, you don't even have a good grasp of introverted feeling, let alone extroverted feeling.
Yeah.
One of the reasons that I support a 4 function model over an 8 function model is for this specific reason, and I use ENTJs a lot. It's like if I was telling an ENTJ to develop, I would say work on your FI, not your FE, even if you think you have problems in FE, because as an ENTJ, what you want to do is develop the authentic moral version of yourself that will then naturally be respected and appreciated by everyone around you. You won't disrupt the FE atmosphere if your FI is developed enough to a point where you are a respectable person in and of yourself. It's like if I was talking about ENTJs in history, you know, do we know any ENTJs for their extroverted feeling? Like Julius Caesar. Like, when we think of Julius Caesar, do we think of extroverted feeling?
No.
And my response there is no. And it's because I think that it's better for the TE FI DOMs to work on the FI TE axis because it's going to develop them into a better version of themselves as opposed to pretending or trying to develop extroverted feeling. Now, I don't think this means you should like ignore what extroverted feeling stands for, right? Because you don't want to just throw all the FE out the window. But it does make sense to me that maybe since that was pushed onto you from such a young age, that maybe that's why you kind of snapped so hard to the other side as you were developing, where it was like, oh no, this feels so super inauthentic. And as soon as FI developed to a point where you recognized what it meant to be authentic, you just rejected the FE. You were just like, no, I don't want to be this FE. I want to do the FI, and I'm going to let my TE go wild, and I'm not going
Yeah.
to restrain myself.
I completely agree. I guess it makes sense, since my FE was, I guess, big enough to where I could realize what I wanted to be. I absolutely hated everything about it. And I just went like, I'm more calm now, I guess, but I really just went wild in the whole like asshole aspect. And, and that was throughout freshman, oh no, that was throughout sophomore and junior year. It was like sort of senior year where I was kind of like, it was like, okay, this is who I am. I've gotten more used to it, and I toned it down a bit. But it was kind of like just really like that lash out aspect from so much FE,
Right.
and me not being, I guess, agile in my mind enough to really understand what I wanted or who I was.
Right. And what's one of the things that's interesting, and I don't think people realize this in terms of cognitive function development, is when you look at Jung's archetypes, the shadow comes before everything else in development. What that means is your last function has to be brought to awareness before you can even begin to develop your secondary and third function. And that's how I interpret it, at least. So you'll often find that especially teenagers will go through this phase where they have this really hard back and forth between their first and fourth function as they recognize what their shadow or fourth function is doing to them, or like how it's impacting them, and they have to battle with that. And once they recognize that that shadow is influencing them, then and only then can they begin to work on their auxiliary and tertiary function. When you think of functions, you would think, oh, I'm good at my first one, so then I'll work on my second and third, and then I'll try to just whatever with my fourth when I get around to it. But it's almost like you have to start with the fourth, and then you can work on the second and third. Because if you don't take care of that fourth, you're just going to be blind, and everything's going to cause you trouble.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. I think you always find a quite perfect way to just put everything,
Well, thank you.
better than I can at least. Like, crap, do you know me more than I know myself? It's a possibility, because it's just like I always try and find, I guess the reason or why I feel what I feel, and you find a way to just put that into MBTI perspective. And I guess that's why I really like MBTI, because it makes perfect sense. It makes more sense than what I can make sense, So it's just like, yeah.
Right. I think it's just a good way to kind of frame how we're thinking about things, and I always like to tell people that MBTI is it's like a map that you're drawing over the brain instead of a drawing of the brain. We're not trying to describe what thinking is. We're trying to describe how can we understand thinking. And that's why I like it as a philosophy. But thank you for the compliment anyway.
Yeah, of course. I really, I guess I can agree on that. It's trying to make or give it a reason to the thinking,
Right.
as in why it's that. Yeah.
Okay, so I feel like we've talked about a lot of things. So let's go for about 10 more minutes. We can probably cover like one more big thing in like 10, and then we can, if you've got time, we can answer some of the questions in chat after that.
I got all the time in the world.
All right, cool.
Well, not really, but I have plenty of time.
So we've touched on FI for like 30 minutes now. Do you maybe want to touch maybe on the SE aspect that we kind of skimmed over at the beginning? Like
yeah, we can do that.
Okay. So when it comes to like these indulgences, I, as individually and personally, know you to be quite prone to these things. I'm not going to go into detail. DoorDash.
Oh my goodness! Don't even get me started. I think I've spent in a span of maybe I don't know how many months, like 6 months or so, an astonishing 4,000 like minimum in just me door dashing.
4,000?
Yeah, like 4,000 minimum. And this is 4,000 US dollars we're talking about. I literally DoorDash or I Uber Eats like every single day. Like I Uber Eats Popeyes the other day. I might Uber Eats something now, and I just do it every single day. And it's just, I just can't get enough, and everybody thinks of it. Everybody's like, yo, why the hell are you spending so much money on food and stuff like that? If it's literally going to disappear, it's just like, but I get to enjoy the living crap out of whatever I eat. And I guess they just won't understand that.
It's like, because you work at like a pretty decent paying job, and you work hard full time, I believe. And it's like, I've done the TE. Why not relax with some nice extroverted sensing? Like I can afford it.
That's how I see it. Exactly. That's exactly how I see it.
Right. And I think one thing that we've talked about outside of this is maybe the idea that you might even be currently closer to like the TE SE archetype of the ENTJ. Like objective personality would call that as a jumper, right? theoretically, I would say that's a developmental stage and not its own type, and that's kind of the difference there. But do you feel like that's something you relate to? Like how do you even see NI in your life? Is it something that you feel is relatively developed or peeks its head
I
out
feel like
often?
I'd be able. I feel like I'd be able to answer that once I knew more about FI because I don't even know. Honestly, I wouldn't even be able to tell you that.
Really?
I'm gonna be. It's like you just asked me a question and maybe it's I don't quite understand what NI would be in my life or how we would be classified, but I really wouldn't be able to answer that because I don't know myself.
Okay. So so to give an example, a few minutes ago, you said something about me being able to kind of like consolidate ideas, right? Like simplify
Hmm.
them. That's a good example of how NI might portray itself, even in an ENTJ. Whereas NI is going to kind of simplify those concepts. Now, I think the ENTJ doesn't do it as consciously, where it's like they do it so quick because it's like their secondary process that it just immediately gets fed into TE, where it's like, oh, I understand it subconsciously on a very simplistic level, so let me TE explain it. Um, and do you feel like you have a relatively good strength at like simplifying things essentially?
Well, yeah, if that's what. Yeah, really good actually.
Okay.
I'd say yeah. I'd say yeah. I'd say I'm really good at that.
Okay.
If that's what NI would be in that certain situation, I'd say yeah, I'm really good at simplifying things. And like you said, it's not something that I necessarily think of. It just comes out with the TE.
Right. Have you ever met an ESTJ? Or I'm sure you probably have, but do you know of any ESTJs?
I mean, I've met some in like other like Discord servers, like MBTI servers, but I've never like directly, had a one-on-one conversation with the ESTJ or been friends with one before. That I know of, at least. I'm sure I've had, but that I know of, no.
Okay. So one of the things I wanted to contrast to maybe help you understand how NI can be more present is think if you've ever talked with an ESTJ, how they struggle to simplify things. Like when an ESTJ goes into like explaining TE, they really dig down on the details. They're going to give you that super in-depth explanation of the TE and why you should be doing the TE. And that's a really good strength for certain people, right? Like, my old manager when I worked at retail was an ESTJ, and the reason he got to manager in retail is because he was an ESTJ and he had really good attention to detail and he was super productive. Now, ENTJs, on the other hand, kind of skip the details and they go, heck it. And then they just kind of generalize those things down with the NI and then give you that generalized concept in the TE. And as the ENTJ grows, they get better at that. And they become even better at stopping to take time to take in these things. That's one of the really big growth points for the ENTJ, and maybe even for you if you do think that you're like currently a double extroverted ENTJ, would be to like stop and think, to process information. In Buddhism, there's a quote or a meditative practice where they essentially, if you're engaging in some sort of bad behavior, it's a three-step process. You go stop doing what you're doing. If you're doing something negative, stop about it. Think or kind of try to understand the negative situation that you're in and then rest on it. And this is really something that I think is super useful for like ENTJs who are so prone to those snap decisions, the immediate black and white, like, oh, I know what's right, I know what's wrong. To take and learn how to consciously, if you're in a negative situation or something that's going to require maybe even some FI, to really stop, like literally just stop yourself and go, okay, maybe I need some time to think this over. Allow yourself to have time. Because what would one of those super charged, heated discussions that ENTJs tend to have about FI look like if you said, give me 20 minutes to think about this, and then I'll give you my response?
Oh, dude, it's like there's so much I need
To
to touch
unpack
on in
there, yeah.
regards to that. Oh, so in regards to or answering the most recent one actually. So every time it's like sometimes it's literally you explained it so well because sometimes when I argue with Kronos or Trim, which is my TI best friend, and when we argue, it's like sometimes he just goes on like on tangents and tangents and tangents and like he starts saying everything out and I don't speak at all. I just sort of like just process everything. And then in a couple of minutes, it's like I see everything clearly, you know? And that's where like that realization comes in is like, wait a minute, dude. Like you're right. It could be either like your writer's like, no, and then I come up with an extremely valuable point that could also just completely diminish the argument as well. But it's just it's after that. It always happens after that thinking. After that, like a couple of minutes of just me not talking at all, and just like thinking, because if it's just me talking and talking and talking, everything that's coming out of my head is just, I'm just blurting it out. Like, if I think of something, it's coming out. If I think of something, it's coming out. And that's what I guess, and that brings me back to what I was saying as well. I may have lied to you, because I don't think that I'm actually good at synthesizing. Sometimes I am, I guess. But a lot of times when I go ahead and explain something as well, I just kind of just, and that's why I could send like numerous paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs, because I just kind of blurred out what's coming out. Like what's coming out of my mind, I just like send it and send it and send it and send it. And I could send like a huge paragraph, and I could have easily just synthesized it if I took my time. Like literally, it could be like even like a minute to 5 minutes, but I never take my time. I kind of just go like on a really like big productive typing, I guess flow, and I just type and type and type and type and type. Same thing with talking. I go like in a really productive talk flow, and I just talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. And only when I slow myself down that I realize, I either see the clear point, or I see that I can either synthesize it as well.
Okay. So yeah, it seems like you already understand what's going on. It's essentially when you give NI time to do its thing, you find that you come to, for the most part, better conclusions. Right?
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah. And as an ENTJ, you don't want to like always stop, because of course, if you find yourself stopping all the time, you're gonna get really drained. Because NI is inherently going to be somewhat draining for you to have to stop and listen. It's like when you're talking to the INFP, right? And you have to stop and listen to them talk about their emotions for a while, and the NI and the FI have to like process that. It's like draining, right? So your TE wants to be like, here's the answer right away, or here's the thing that I'm thinking about. And that's what ENTJs need to learn from the auxiliary standpoint in terms of growth, is once you learn that stop and wait process, your answers become so much more definitive and clear, which is why it's important to think about what are the optimal situations to save my energy for, to allow me to do that when I need to. Let's say I need to make 10 decisions today, and 2 of them are going to be really important. How can I learn to stop and allow NI to take in information on those 2 really important decisions, right? Because you're not going to do it on all of them. It's just no way. Like maybe when you're like 50, you'll have the NI power to like stop and NI analyze every situation.
When it comes to the whole analyzing situation, it doesn't happen consciously. I'd say it's like unconsciously, to the sense where it's like I could be arguing with Kronos, and then I know where I just zone out. I'm not even paying attention to what he's saying. It's just like these like 3 to 5 minutes to where I'm just zoned out, and then I'm like processing. So I guess it's not unconsciously, I guess, because I literally, I just zone out. So I can't pay attention to my surrounding and synthesize it at the same time. I just
That,
think it's really hard.
that's why they
Yeah,
call NI zone outs. They call it the NI zone outs, because when you go into NI, you're literally like losing your surroundings to process information.
yeah, that's what I literally have to do. Otherwise, I can't do it. And the times that it has happened, that's how it has happened. Someone could be talking, and then like 3 to 5 minutes later, after like my NI zone out, I come up with this brilliant, synthesized plan, or point of view that then I let out, and that's usually what either wins the argument, or realizes that I'm wrong and that they're right, and it's like, okay, I see where you're coming from. I've synthesized it all, and this is what I come to the conclusion to. But it's always like zoned out. Like you could be talking, and if I'm zoned out in 5 minutes or later, I'm like, what did he just talk about?
Yeah,
I don't know. I just know that I came up with a conclusion. That's
right.
pretty much it, I guess.
Because like you sometimes you'll even lose like what they're talking about, and like because they'll say
Yeah.
one specific thing, and then your mind jumps in that rabbit hole, and it's like, okay, what am I like? What does this mean? Or like, how am I interpreting this information? What does that imply? And they could keep talking for 4 minutes, meanwhile you're still on that same thought. And then at the end of their what they're saying, you go, look at this, like look at this gem that I made while you were still talking, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly how it goes.
Okay, cool. Great. Well, I think for the most part, Madshot, I think you have a really good understanding of your own functions and how you kind of use them, these sorts of things. The only things that I would say, like, recommend in terms of like coaching moving forward is, again, just be aware of the introverted feeling. The stop and wait kind of practice, I think, is really important for ENTJs. So if you get to a point in the future where you have a really emotionally charged situation, allow yourself to stop, think about it, maybe even rest on it, as the philosophies kind of say. And once you learn those, I think you're gonna do great, because I've seen your executive TE in action, and I know that if you sometimes, not all the time, sometimes allowed the NI to have a little bit more input into that, you'd make really, really good decisions on what you're gonna do. and make
Yeah,
really
that's
good
what I think
decisions.
I need to. That's what I think I need to focus on as well. It's that stopping and waiting. But sometimes, when you're in the heat of the moment, TE is just so overpowering. I guess compared to, it's really hard to do.
Right.
But I guess it's like I'd have to actively like be thinking about, okay, there's something really bad's about to happen, but let me not go hard on the TE and just see it, I guess from a third view or like a third person view, and just because otherwise, if I'm like on TE, it's like I'm blinded of everything else, and I would find it really, really hard for me to just actively tap into my FI, knowing like my TE is overpowering everything.
Right. And a lot of times you don't even need to get into the FI. It's just sometimes the NI can help. But at the same time, I don't want you to think that that has to be your everyday solution to every problem. So go back to like when we play Apex Legends. One of the reasons you're so successful is because you're so immediately decisive a lot of the time. You have that TE ability to kind of snap make decisions. Meanwhile, I'm on your team over here at NI land, like reluctant to make a decision because it's like I don't have all the information necessary to understand if we're going to win or lose this outcome. Meanwhile, you've shot 4 guys. Like like that's the difference
Yeah.
between an INTJ and an ENTJ. For me, it's like I need to learn how to do the TE more. Sometimes I have to get into the TE decision. But with the ENTJ, it's like sometimes you need to learn how to get into the NI and stop and process the information. And once you find that nice like 70-30, 80-20 mix where you have just enough for it to matter, to be there when it matters, that's when you're golden.
Yeah, to be there when it matters. I think you put that right. To be
Right.
there when it matters.
Okay, well, I
Yeah.
think this was really productive. Do you want to maybe go through some of the questions that people had in the stream chat real quick?
Oh yeah, I love questions.
All
I love
right.
questions.
So I'm going to scroll up and try to get some of the older ones first. But if you have questions that you would like to ask either Madshot or I, now would be the time. Oh my goodness, there's quite a few people talking. I saw one question. Age range, we already got that one. If you were to get feedback not in real time, like in written form to be read later on, would you heed to it, or would you like appreciate that?
If I got feedback by someone in written form,
Like, so let's say a manager gave you feedback on an assignment, but instead of telling you it, they like emailed you it. Do you think you'd appreciate that more than being told, or you'd be able to process it better in written form as opposed to the more direct response?
I guess it really I guess it depends. Sometimes I would, and sometimes I just completely discard it. I guess if they would take their free time to find a way and give me advice, knowing that they don't have to, I guess I would appreciate it more because knowing that they did it out of their free will, out of their heart, the kindness of their heart. And if they're gonna take their time to like send me an email, they have to consciously sit down, be thinking of me and finding a way that they could help me, then I would completely appreciate it and I would take that. Yeah.
Okay.
But
For the
then sometimes it also depends on who's it coming from. If it's a random guy, I'm probably not even gonna consider it. Like who are you? But if it's like someone that's I guess credentials maybe, or
so
someone
the
that
TE credentials.
that I can look up to, then yeah, I would definitely consider it, especially if they took out of their free time.
There's a reason that higher TE tends to be more prone to respecting intellectual authority or someone who has credentials, and it's because TE sees everything in terms of competency, right? So if your manager who you respect wrote you, feedback, you're probably more likely to take it than Joe Schmo off the street who said he didn't like how you handled, a call or something, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, like who's Joe Schmo? Come on, man.
So earlier you talked about your relationship with your mother. I believe you said it's an FE Dom. Someone wants to
Mhm.
know. Umbro wants to know what's your relationship with the FE Doms in your life like now.
In my life, like, oh, it's like really chill. I'm still really close to my mom. It's just like one thing that I really hate. Every single morning I wake up, 'cause I still live with my parents. I'm only 19, but every single morning I wake up, the first thing she wants from me is a really big hug. And that just upsets me. And I tell her too. And like she already knows me. Why is my camera doing that again? And then she already knows me, she's just like, but then it's just like every morning I just already expect like, and I just have to. And another weird thing, I don't really like feel much from hugs. Hugs are just like, some people feel like these big connections with hug, and I just don't see where they're getting that from. I just see it as in just like, oh, like a hug, okay. And that just really upsets me. Like, I just don't like the whole hug thing. And it's always expected. And I don't know if that's FE or something. I think that's FE.
Hmm.
Because it's the same thing with my grandma, and my grandma doesn't live with us, but it's the same
When
thing. They always want that hug and stuff.
when you
Oh my
give the
gosh.
hug, it like reinforces the bond that's there essentially.
Yeah.
Trust me, I'm married to an FE dom. I understand. Like, I get it. She always be
Yeah,
wanting
and
hugs too.
a lot of times it's always just those FE stuff that she does that just annoys me. But I kind of just fight through it because that's my mom, that's her. So
Right, and
I
that's
kind of just like
healthy
the
for you to actually just be like, all right, let me do it. Like,
yeah. But then there's also sometimes where I also lash out, you know, on her, and then she just like she just gets really like like, oh wow, I didn't know I forgot you're a really mean guy now or something. Because she knows me from when I was like little. She was like really kind, and then when I went like that, but then she's like, I guess she's gone used to it. So, but
mhm.
we have it's a healthy relationship all around.
Great.
There's those small moments, maybe 5-minute arguments, 10-minute arguments that could be like my TE clashing with her FE. But then literally after that happens, we kind of just discard it and we go back to normal. So yeah.
I just like this comment because it's something that someone may have suggested before on like the Discord. Uh, Someone could easily mistype you as an ESFP if they didn't talk to you. Do you think you agree with that statement? Like someone
Yeah, I
might
mean,
think you're an ESFP if they just saw you, for example.
yeah, no, I would agree with that statement. I don't know if it would be more ESTP than ESFP or ESFP more than ESTP. But I would definitely agree. Someone who doesn't really like actively talk to me would probably consider me that. Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, it's happened before. So
and I can easily understand because like looking at you now, it's like you give off sometimes a little bit of those EP vibes. But as soon as I hear you talk, and as soon as you talk about the things that are important to you, I'm like, there's no way. This is not an
yeah,
EP.
no, you
Like,
can easily find a way that it's not true, but normally it can be perceived as that, and it has, like I said.
okay, well, I don't feel like there's too many other questions unless you see some that I'm missing.
I don't know.
If there's anyone in chat and you want to ask a question, now's the time. I'm gonna go for another 2 or 3 minutes unless we get another question. Other than that, we can go ahead and wrap up. I think this was pretty productive, or at least interesting. Got to see insight into your ENTJ
Brain.
brain. Okay.
I think Umbra asked, how do I ever decide what I want?
Oh,
Um,
okay.
it's really difficult. Like sometimes it's just I see so many options when it comes to decide. Like let's say eating food, I see so many options, and I'm trying to. It's because it's difficult because I'm always trying to find the best one. Like I guess I can use my first car as an example. I'm gonna buy my first car in like a week or so, and I have spent 3 months, and Asura knows too.
I can
I
confirm.
have spent 3 months going through. I've had 4 different websites that I have used. I have literally Googled and searched through every single car that I could possibly afford, and I have seen everything from gas mileage, from what the bang for your buck is, how fast they are, objectively which is the best one, and I still don't have which one's the best one, and that's why I haven't come to a decision. I don't even know which one I'm going to pick. It might take me another week or so, but eventually it always comes to the point where I can boil it down to a couple of really really good decisions, and then in a split second I just go whatever. Let me pick this one, and then I just decide.
Do you feel
It's kind
sometimes
of
impulsive on that kind of stuff?
Yeah. It's like sometimes I have to be impulsive. Otherwise, I'd take way too much time
Right.
to a point where it would be beneficial of me to be impulsive.
Right. I think it's look at like SFPs. SFPs know what they want and they don't spend a lot of time thinking about it. Like they have that strong FI and the SE and both of them are just like, all right, yeah, I know exactly what I want, what I'm looking for, and I have a little bit of TE to help me go get it. Where the NTJ, it's like they have to like think about the outcomes of the things they want, but this is also battling against like how they feel about it. Like, oh, it's like, oh, I really like this thing, but also look, this one's the best, or this one gets better mileage, or this one does this. Whereas the SFP's like, I like this car because it looks really nice and it's important to me. Like,
Yeah, and a lot of the times there's just so much good stuff, or like there's so much stuff that you have to. Because I'm always trying to find the best in anything. It literally could be anything. I'm always trying to find the best option, and a lot of the times there's a lot of really really good options that makes it difficult to decide. But then there's also times where it's a clear cut answer on what the best is, and I easily decide.
okay.
You know,
As
I'm
soon as
only,
you
I only
find the
struggle.
best. That's
Yeah,
what
as
you
soon as I
know.
find the best, that's it. Everything else just gets completely discarded. Like not a single other thought. But then there's also times where the best can be like three different things, and you have to try and find a way which one of those three is the best.
I've seen you
I
kind
guess
of
you
do
could.
that TE, especially when you're like buying things for like, your stream or whatever, your room. Like you'll be like, oh, what is the one that is the most highly rated and reviewed by professionals within the field type of thing. You go to that TE authority type of thing. Or like not even doesn't even have to be authority, it's just which is objectively the thing that should be good or is supposedly going to be good.
Yeah, that's what I did with my PC. That's what I did with my mouse. That's what I did with my keyboard. It's what I did with my mixer. That's what I did with my camera. With everything, everything is just it has to be the best. There's always the best that I can afford. Of course, there's always going to be a better camera, but pretty much it's just always the best. It's always looking for that.
Within the range that you have right now. Because
Of
it's like,
course,
what's the best camera between $100 and $300? That's a question that you can ask, as opposed to, well, the
exactly,
best camera in the world, $50,000. But that doesn't seem
exactly,
realistic.
exactly, exactly. Yeah, that's pretty
Okay.
much it.
Vino asks me, I think, will I be doing more coaching session streams? Yes. I'm planning to do a coaching probably every 2 or 3 weeks. So the Monday streams are going to be the more serious streams, where the Saturday streams are going to be kind of chill. So feel free to stop in on Mondays. I'll either be doing probably coaching, a lecture, or maybe next Monday I'm probably going to type like a famous person or something. I don't know, on stream, just see how that goes. Umbra asks, do I only coach Gamma Quadrant NTPs? No, I coach anyone who, especially if you buy a session. I've only done 2 coaching sessions on stream, but I plan to do more here in the future. So keep an eye out. I'll try to get some different types in here, switch it up. Maybe look at some NFJs or something. NTJs and NFPs and NTPs tend to be the most common to come to me specifically, but maybe that's just because of my channel and my content. Have I ever gotten an SFJ? Not in coaching. In typing, yes, I've typed an SFJ, but I've never coached an SFJ. And you know what's funny, Madshot, is the SFJ, her ENTJ husband bought her the session. She didn't buy the session herself. It
Really?
was an ISFJ, yep, and her husband bought the session for her. I've never had an
And
SFJ buy a session themselves.
why do you think is that? Why do you think that is?
I just think they're less prone to being like hyper interested in type. Of all the types, it's MBTI is kind of woohoo in the terms of sensing types, especially SI, because SI is really grounded and realistic. So they look at type and they're like, oh, that's fun, or like, oh, it's like astrology, that sort of thing. But they don't
Is it
really
like
see
because of
the
SI?
yeah, but
ISI?
also with the SFJs in particular, they don't see the TE like utility of type. Like when I typed the ESTJ, or was it ESTJ? I don't remember. Whatever. I can't remember. He's ESTJ or ESTJ. He saw the utility in type, even if it wasn't like his theory that he super hyper believed. He saw the immediate application. So you look at an SFJ, and they have high SI, so they're ground in reality instead of abstractions, and they don't have TE. So they don't have the like, oh, what's the utility of this? So they're like the least likely to want to be interested unless they have some personal reason to be interested in it.
Okay. I guess it makes sense. I mean, I guess it's the same thing with ISTJs as well, I believe.
Yeah, except at least the ISTJs at least can be like, oh, what's the utility? Like, how can I, like, what is this going to do for my company? Like, how can I use this for self growth, that type of thing. All
So do you
right.
think it's the
Oh,
same with ISFJ and ESFJ? Or is it
yeah,
different?
I don't like. I have not met many SFJs who are like really interested in type. I think there's like 1 or 2 on the Discord server, and
Yeah,
even
then it's
then
SFJs.
they're not like super interested in the theory itself. They're usually kind of more interested in the community or like talking about type with other people or connecting with other people to see the relationships they have because of type. Those are the byproducts of the theory instead of being interested in the theory itself.
Yeah, then it's SFJs. That's what I wanted to know. If it was SFJs or if it was just ISFJ.
I think it's probably both SFJs. I don't think I think ESFJ is like the one type I've never had a typing session with. I don't think I've ever done a typing session with an ESFJ, and it's just they just don't come into sessions like ever. Like, all right. Well,
Maybe in the future.
what about FE utility? If it even makes sense. Well, FE does have utility, but I feel like the FE utility for something like type would be like, how can I connect with other people? Because I think Briggs herself was like an NFJ. I think I want to say she was an NFJ. She was FE top 2. One of them was at least. And for her, it was like the utility of people getting along. That's why Briggs wrote Gifts Differing and developed the MBTIs, because she wanted people to be able to communicate better. ESFJs are a myth. Yeah, rarest type. INTJs, dime a dozen. There's a million of them out there, but ESFJs, I don't think they exist. Bigfoot.
That's funny.
All right, well, let's go ahead and wrap up. Thanks, everyone, for stopping into the stream. This will be uploaded on YouTube tomorrow if you are interested in seeing it. Thank you, Madshot/Cesar, for coming on and being my guest today.
It has been my pleasure. Thank you for having me here.
Yeah, for sure. It was nice having your insight into being an ENTJ, and hopefully I at least helped you understand some of the things going on in that.
Yes, you have. Yes, you have.
All right. See you later, everyone.